Yo, good evening, everybody. What's going on? Welcome to another installment of the Level Show. As always, you got myself, Kofi, aka K-Sis. You got the broski, Mr. Dan Mason. It's down at the bottom chilling, and you've got one of our long-term mutual friends in the building. Please introduce yourself, sir.
What's up, fellas? My name is JJ Bola. I'm a writer and poet and former basketball player when we had good knees.
Yeah, that's right.
For real. For real, we've known each other. I don't even know how long we've known each other for, man.
It must be 20 years.
Oh, for sure. It's been a minute. It's been a minute. I think even before then, but because I met you in Camden, you was hooping with Dan in what's it called?
Yeah,
White heat times.
Man used to get up. Oh my god, different. Yo,
was that goat water, innit?
That was good.
Hey, sis, you're a prick.
He was a man amongst boys. Like I remember looking at him thinking, right, I need to do whatever he's doing, boy, because he was just built different.
Moving different. Just moving different.
I was lucky back in the day.
You're lucky for what?
I was lucky to be able to get up like that, mate. I got up off the sofa today and my knees went, no. Like, my knees were just mad, bro.
Nah, I hear that.
Hold on, I'm coming through on 2. I'll leave 1.
Oh, yeah, you're on your thing. Just let me know. I'll switch you over. Cool. Yo, anyways, thank you everybody for joining in today. Just jump in the comments, let us know where you're locking in from. I know we got Mr. International, JJ Bola, all verified blue tick in that. I was just flexing on the IG live to send swipe up. Do you know what? Actually, I'm not even gonna lie. I can't wait to do that. I just want to go swipe up like that.
You know what? The thing is, yeah, I didn't even really know about it. Like,
that doesn't surprise me.
I thought everyone had it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't realize it was a thing. And then when
blue ticks or 10K,
people were like, "Oh, you got the swipe up." Found out it was special. I was like, all right, now I use it for everything.
Nah, you and Kwame just hit that 10K.
Oh yeah,
a few weeks ago. Yeah, so him, boy, you two have been doing bits. Like I'm proud to say I fully know you two like that. It's inspiring.
Yeah, we're all trying. You guys are doing your thing as well, man. I can't wait to go to another live night of you. That's
yeah, man. Well, you're gonna go back into your raving days and come to one of the club nights instead, yeah?
Well, I'm gonna hit. You know me, like I got one good rave in me a year. Like you know me, and I'm quite person, but I got one good rave in me a year. Do you know what I mean?
Listen.
Like I appreciate the advice. I can't always come out, and I appreciate that you guys still have love, even though I'm not really out like that. But that one good one in a year,
that's you. Do you know what it is? Yeah, I'm gonna let you into a little secret. Yeah, if you want to get on this guy's good side, drop Janet Jackson's. What's it called? Everywhere I go, every spot I see. I swear down, yeah, I've never seen anybody lose it when that tune drops. I don't care how hard you up that tune for him.
You know what it is? It's also there's certain songs, yeah, that you think you're the only person who's listening to it. Like, do you know what I mean? So you think, because it's not really
look
like
at this guy. Look at this guy at the bottom. Who's this?
Like, and then when you hear it drop in the club, you're like, wow, and then you just lose yourself, man.
No, it's true. It's true. There's some tunes which you just feel to just express yourself for anyway. And those are one of those tunes. But it's a happy song. It's actually a really beautiful song when you deep the words. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, let's get into it. Let's start right from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you born? And then let's go from there. Where were you born?
I was born in Kinshasa, Congo, in the province of Bandalungwa, if you want to be specific.
Wow.
A long time ago, I ain't gonna say which year, but you know, many years ago. But yeah, man. So, family came to the UK as refugees in 1992. I was about 6 years old. And yeah, I grew up in North London, Camden. Yeah, and just, you know, heavy into basketball, man. Basketball is life. Like, and it was everything growing up. Everything.
That was from Congo.
No, from here. I mean,
right.
I tried playing football, but it's just tall and skinny, and football was boring to me, man. Do you know what I mean? It didn't really appeal, like, you know. And then basketball was just so much action, all the dunking, all of the. I remember when I first saw someone dunk, I was like, I need to do that. I need to do that. And literally, like, that's all I just wanted to do was just dunk the ball, man. And you know what's beautiful about basketball as well is it allowed you to connect with other people, but also it allowed you to get a lot of your emotions out. So, bruv, every time when I fully started dunking, but if I had a bad day, if I got a cross on my report, I would just dunk the hell out of that basketball.
Probably hence why your knees are finished now, isn't it?
That's why your knees are finished, bro.
The thing is, we say his knees are finished, but what are mine, man? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, your knees are bad, though.
Yeah, robo knee.
Yeah, your knees are gone.
All right, cool. So you say you touched down in Camden. It's 1990. So, I mean, did you start in secondary school or because in 1990?
Primary, 92. So primary, yeah. Started primary, yeah.
So 92. So what? And then literally you picked up basketball from there?
No, picked up basketball when I was in secondary. So yeah,
cool.
Yeah. Started off with football in primary and secondary as well, but it was just boring, man. I just didn't really, it just didn't really connect.
So explain that transition from Congo life to London life. I know although I was born here, I grew up in Ghana till I was 6, and then I was here, reception, all cussing at people in tree, like I couldn't even speak English at all. My sister had to just hold my mouth 1-2 times. So explain like my integration into London society was a bit difficult to say the least. So how was yours?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely challenging. You know, when you're that age, you don't really understand what's going on. Like, you just get put into an environment and you adapt, But yeah, when we first started school here, I couldn't speak the language. I remember my first day of school, like, I can still see us going into the classroom and all of this kind of stuff. But I didn't understand what was going on. Like, I didn't understand who was saying what. It took me ages to pick up things in terms of the language. But there were, you know, it's so funny, like there were ways to communicate. You kind of didn't understand literally, but you knew what was happening, you know. And there was a couple of guys who like would try and bully and whatever, and we knew when things would turn into a fight, and we had to protect ourselves or defend ourselves, that kind of thing. Them situations, like you can tell when people are cussing you out, or when do you know what I mean?
You can't do nothing because you can't fly. You're about to speak, and people are thinking they're gonna start cussing them and click or something.
And then you're getting mad. You're trying to explain to the teacher, but you know, you don't know the word.
You don't know what you're saying. Hold on. Just imitate this. If somebody was cussing you out and getting mad, like what would you say in Congo? I'm actually going to ask you to speak Lingala right now.
So this is the thing with Lingala, right? You know how other countries have cuss words that are bad, like you know, like the C word, B word, like proper. So Lingala doesn't really have that. But we have like sayings that are as bad. So someone could say Zoba is the most obvious one, which just basically means dumb, right? Yeah. If I say to you, "Oh, you're dumb, bro. You're being dumb," that's nothing. It's like, all right, cool. It's not really. But you say that to someone in Ghana, bro, that's like a serious thing. Fight. Or another one is like Nyamanayo, right? Which is like you're an animal, basically. Like you're an animal. Bro, that's not in English. If someone said to me you're an animal, I'd be like, okay, what? But if you say that in Lingala, fam, or like Taramutulu kola soso, like that, like
bro, I'm not even like these are harsh.
So like that's like, look at your head. Your head looks like a chicken, right? Now imagine you're mid beef and someone says that to you. You're gonna be like, "Are you okay?" Like what?
He's not laughing, yeah.
But in Lingala, you say that, and boy,
it's spice.
Yeah, that's how it works. Then
it's fine. And it sounds a bit similar to mine. The integration was a bit tough in that sense. So then, when you're hooping in that, obviously, then that was a bit of your solitude. I'm gonna tie this into your first book, No Place to Call Home. Book was wicked, actually, guys. I'm sure there's people who are locked in now who've read that. If you haven't, pick it up. Steve, if you're watching, pick it up. It's a hell of a story. Now, just describe a little bit of that to you. If you're talking from if that book is written from your own perspective and you're reflecting into secondary school life here, or fictional, describe it.
So like, yeah, it's a novel. It's definitely like, it's not my story, but it's definitely a story that I'm very familiar with, and I couldn't have written without experiencing what I had experienced, and it was just like written in a way for people to kind of understand that journey of what it means to, move from one place to another, but also be in a situation where you're undocumented, or you have refugee status. And especially if you're young, like the pressures around that. So like these times when we were playing basketball, for instance, or like at school, like stuff like school trips, all of those kind of stuff, like they weren't really things that we could access, because of our situation. But at the time, you just didn't really think about it, like you didn't really understand. And then so for me, it was like a way to look back at that journey and then try to get people to understand how difficult, things are. And especially I look at it from the perspective of like my parents, like, you're raising children in a new country, you don't really know the language, you don't have status. Like, how do you keep going from day to day? You know what I mean? How do you have hope for tomorrow? And so it's like for me, like the story is really a story of hope and trying to keep going like day after day, because there's so much that happens and so much that has happened. I think everyone has like a point in their lives, or different points in their lives, where it's like things could have went either way. Like if your life turned out all right, you have certain points in your life you can look back and be like,
sticky situation.
Like at the time I didn't really see that, but I was lucky to get out of this or out of that or whatever. And so that's what it's really about. I see Dan nodding hard there,
bro. You know what it is? It's because we all came up in central London, man. So I don't think people understand really what it means to be like a teenage black boy in London from like certain ages, and it's just, there can be some bad wrong turns, and there can be some good ones, but look back and you think, you know what, me and your pals, or me and whoever, we made it. Because I was like, obviously we're so far from it now, but it's still quite dangerous for like a young black boy growing up. Like it's a dangerous landscape, especially if you live in a city in some of these like this bad areas. And it's even worse if you're a foreigner touching down, like like you know what I mean, you got the added pressure of being a foreigner as well touching down. So I know what you're saying, man.
Yeah, it's mad, boy. Going on to like moving on to an estate and you don't know the language, you're just looking at people like, what's going on? But yeah, it was real, man. It was real, but it builds character. Do you know what I mean? And for me, I always say that's why I like, especially how our parents raised us up, because they were kind of like, you belong everywhere type of thing. Don't exclude yourself. No one's better than you. No, no one's above you. No one's below you. Like, so that kind of gave me the mentality where I felt comfortable going anywhere and doing anything and speaking to people, different races, cultures, whatever your background was. I'm like, okay, I see you just like you see me. All right, so what's the deal? Let's have this conversation type of thing. And I think that mentality really allowed me to, I mean, I still carry that with me now, like, do you know what I mean? Where I feel comfortable talking, with people from all over. And that's a real skill. Like, it really allows you to connect with different people and experiences.
You know what? That kind of leads me into like a quick question because, and I don't want to get too far away from sort of like what we're talking about now, but it kind of links in a way. And it's something I thought about the other day because obviously I moved to the UK when I was like 10, 11 years old. And I had an experience like sort of like prejudice before. And then when I hit the UK, that's when I understood that this stuff existed. So obviously now you just said, you know, no one should exclude you from anywhere, and you have the right to be everywhere. Like, what was that like for you when you actually realized that there's a part of humanity that just they're not for certain people, or like people look at other people.
You know what? Yeah. You know what? So my experience with that was a little bit different, right? So growing up, and especially my parents, but especially my dad, like when we were in primary school, like he sat down because you know I have siblings, so mostly brothers. There's quite a lot of us, but yeah. But he sat down and was basically like, "This is what racism is. This is what they're gonna say to you. These are the words they're gonna call you. Blah blah blah." And we was like, what? Why were people like? It was confused. What? And then we'd be like, well, no one's done that yet. But what? And then he would basically he basically prepped us, prepped us for that, right? And so, you know, when we first started, all right, cool, it's normal, nothing really happened like that. But when the first one started happening, like I was just like, oh,
yeah.
So it wasn't as much of a shock
for you guys.
That makes sense. Yeah. So we would just go back home and be like, yo, this is what, I mean, obviously we still got angry and whatever, but it was like, this is what's, and then, you know, dad would be like, oh, yeah, I told you, remember he's having this conversation, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, we kind of break down reasons why, break down the psychology about it, try not to internalize things, etc., etc. And, you know, my dad particularly was heavy on kind of educating us about our history and our culture and all of that. So we had a lot of like pride kind of growing up. And so, yeah, so it kind of got to a point where it was like, when we experienced those, like we found a way to have pride to stick up for ourselves kind of thing, you know, and it was challenging, but then it was kind of like, the way that we saw it is like, the problem isn't with us, the problem is with you. So you lot got to sort out whatever's going on in your minds, because I'm good over here, like we're good, you know what I mean? We're good over here. But yeah, it was, and that's what I fully believe. I think you need to prepare young people, like children, etc., for the reality of the world, and in that way, when things happen, they can handle it, you know.
Sweet. It just lets me know that I was in a bit of a bubble.
So what was yours then?
No, because my parents, like, because you got to think, I came from a place where like white people were tourists, they were the minority. So, or anyone from any, like, you know, Chinese people, whoever, like everybody was, and in our society, there's just there's none of that. So no one talks about it like that, because we're also, you know, the Caribbean is exactly what they say it is. It's very relaxed, very chilled. People are very cool. Just know that if it gets on top, it gets on top. But like most of the time, it's just really chilled, right? And it was just never something that we had to speak about, because it wasn't something that was expected. Like where we come from, we've dealt with that, you know, like we're done. Like, we're done with all of that. Like we handled that. We could see it in our backyards. There's still places in the Caribbean where my ancestors were like chained up. I could see it physically. I saw it physically.
Wow.
You know what I'm trying to say? So all through the Caribbean, the history is raw. You could touch it. You can almost connect to it in a way. But we've kind of felt like, in a way, we've kind of dealt with it, and it's only in sort of like these countries like the UK, like Europe, America, where they're really, really battling with it, and where I kind of felt like we had to experience it first time. Like there was no preparation for it, because it just hit me like bam. Like, it was just like my parents didn't need to talk to me about it, because we're all God's children. Because I grew up in the church, right? So I'm thinking, you know what I mean? Like there's no need to talk about that. So I guess my parents didn't really prepare me for what it was, like what it was gonna be. Or maybe they, in their heads, they might have been a way like they didn't think it was gonna be that bad.
Yeah.
You just see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So like my experiences with it was just like a complete shock. I was just like, rah. Like, you lot really don't like, man. Okay.
You know what? Yeah, my dad spent a bit of time in Europe before we came out, and he spent time in like Belgium, Italy, Romania, right? Where, I mean, if you think the UK is racist, like imagine being a black man in Romania in the 70s.
Yeah. How did he ever share any of those experiences with you guys?
So I mean, so he talks about it. So my dad, as we got a picture of him, he's still alive, God willing. Like, so give thanks. There's a picture of him in the 1970s during the Romanian Revolution, right? And he tells a story where the city was on lockdown, army troops, all of this, right? And it just kind of happened overnight. And he wasn't really aware of what was going on. He was one of the only few black people, right? And one time he's going home through the streets, there's shots licking through the streets, yeah? And then like the soldiers, they clock him, innit? And then they draw like at him to see like what side he's on, right? And then they see that he's a black man, and he's like, and then they're like, well, he can't, the beef's not with him, like, do you know what I mean? They just move him on. He's like, yeah, go through. And they let him go through. He runs into that house. And then they carry on and shooting. Like, the licks carry on. But he's got the pictures, like, he was fully there and stuff. You know what I mean? He tells it with such detail. So, after, so his experience with that, then he's telling us these stories and saying, look, this is how it might be out there. And I'm not saying that everyone's bad, obviously, but prepare yourself. It's X, Y, Z. And this is why happened, blah blah blah. So when it did start happening, we was like, oh, okay. So and then you just kind of like, you find out how to react to different things in different ways. So for instance, even like I remember in secondary school, one of my kind of white best friends growing up said the N-word, right? Like I just stood up and just punched him. But that's what I did as a 12-year-old. Bam. And he apologized straight away and he sat down. That guy was humble for that. Like, he never ever even thought about it. He instantly understood that that's the wrong thing to do. Do you know what I mean? Like, but we also had another teacher, this teacher who used to take the piss out of our African names and blah, 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 whatever.
Teachers,
you know, you can't just go up and punch a teacher or whatever, like, do you know what I mean? So you have to use your brain and think about how differently you want to approach it. So I remember one time that I was in detention, and this teacher was cussing out our names, after school detention, and I got upset, ran out the class, started crying, and then the teacher ran after me, like. And then he was like, oh, what's wrong? I was like, no, you can't cuss out our name, blah, blah, that's my culture, whatever. And then it was just me and him one-to-one. And he was very apologetic. He was really apologizing. And bear in mind, this was the teacher who was always kind of like the bully and, you know, you're in trouble, blah, blah, blah. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. And I realized there was a shift of power. And I said, wait a minute, he's apologizing to me. Oh, so that must mean that he could get in trouble.
Right.
Oh, I see. So then I was like, if you do that one more time,
I'm on to you. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm on to you. But the way he switched up his approach, I was like, so then it just kind of teaches you life skills of how to deal with certain situations in a different way and that. And it's tough, but I think like that's just the reality of the world. You know what I mean? Like we just have to learn how to navigate it until things change.
Do you think a lot of these experiences have kind of influenced your writing and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's some parts in the stories like that I've written where it includes certain experiences like that. There's some parts where it's also like on the flip end. Do you know what I mean? As much as I have had those experiences, But you know, I grew up like in a community that I grew up in. It was very welcoming. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of whether it's like, especially on our block, whether it's like English, Somali, Irish, like whatever nationality, like we would all basically go to each other's houses, and our parents all knew each other's parents, and you know, they would pick up. Like we would pick up their kids to take them to primary school and then go to secondary school, and then we walk back home together and blah blah blah. We babysit for this person if you know the mum had to go work and the mum was a single mum in the evenings, blah, like all that kind of stuff. So it was a real community. So there was both sides, like, as much as there was like, you know, obviously like the racism and stuff, but there was also the inclusion. And I think for me, that taught me a lot. Like it taught me to, because obviously you can't like just put everyone in the same boat. Because obviously if I said, oh, all white people are bad, then like that's not going to make sense. And then it's stereotyping in another way. And so it's like, oh, okay, it learned me how to really get to the core of people and understand people. And for me, it's like, you know what? People fundamentally like are the same in life, you know? Like really and truly, we all want the same things. But unfortunately, like it becomes misguided a lot of the times in terms of like, you know, what people think they want, and a lot of the times it's more battle for power and ego, you know, rather than actually like what they want in their hearts. But yeah, man.
So like getting back to the start, I feel like we got off topic a little bit, but it kind of still ties in.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
How did like writing start for you? Like when did you kind of decide that this was gonna be your thing, and like, how did you get into it?
So yeah, it was a bit random. I mean, it was very random, right? One thing that I realized was like consistent was that like, so growing up, I used to read a lot. My parents would always tell us read books. But I think I was the only.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you a story. I remember.
Yeah.
We were dipping from like a finals in Manchester or something. I remember all of us, like all of us were doing the most. Yeah. But you would always be that conscious guy on the bus, either reading or listening to something that we were clearly all not even ready for yet. Or something. You know what I mean? Like, I remember saying to Sizzle, I said, bro, like, you need to understand what it used to be like on the bus with Juju and them, man. Like, it's so mad, bro.
Oh,
like,
my God.
It's crazy.
Yo, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I echoing still?
No, you're right, bro.
All right. Sorry.
We can't see you, though.
Can't see you, man.
Yeah, no, that's because I've been behind the scenes just messing around with my audio. Sorry. Go on.
No, go on, carry on. Yeah.
You know what? It's so funny that you should say that, because, like, I know those memories, but it kind of slips away. I forget that that's what it was like. You know what I mean? But so, like, the whole my parents would be like, read books. Yeah. But I think for me, it was the person. I was the person that resonated the most, right? And then I was like, at first, you know, especially as young people, teenagers, you don't like being told what to do, right? So why are you telling me read? And then I thought, wait, let me actually try and read these things then, innit? And when I started reading and getting onto different books, I was like, yo, I'm finding out some serious stuff here.
Yeah, changes the way you think, right?
It's changing the way I'm thinking. I'm learning so much. And then I remember there was a bookshop. So there's a certain bookshops like around London that completely transformed the books that I had access to. There was a bookshop in Dalston, a black bookshop in Dalston called Centerprise, which unfortunately is closed down. There's New Beacon bookstore in Finchley Park, which is still open. It's amazing. There was another bookstore in King's Cross, but I can't remember what it was called. But basically, it sold all like classic books for £2. Right. And £2 in those days as well. Like, do you know what I mean? That's acceptable. And there was an African Caribbean library in Peckham. Right. So I used to take the bus from Camden to Peckham just to go to that library, just to get a Marcus Garvey book or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, rah. So this is what happened. You're learning things in more and more detail, you know, and what life was like and all of this. And then like I never thought of myself like becoming a writer. But when basketball kind of, you know, started to went from a main thing to a side thing to not a thing at all. Like I found myself having loads of energy. You know, it's in a real ballers, like with athletes that had loads of energy, but then I felt like I had nowhere to put it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I was becoming frustrated. I was becoming restless. Like I was, you know, down on myself because I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I just started had a little diary. I just started writing. Started like writing little notes, little stuff, whatever it was. And then my friend, my guy, Deng, shout out to Deng, he was really like one of the biggest influences that kind of propelled me to a next level. So, you know, Deng saw that I had this little notebook and I was writing stuff down. He didn't even know it was poetry or whatever.
Deng's a linchpin. He's always been that guy.
Deng is the plug, man.
He's a linchpin, bro.
He knows, listen, that guy, he could be president of the country one day, man. He knows how to
it's surprisingly very clever. Like, and it's no disrespect to him, but it's more because he comes across so chilled and so quiet.
Yeah.
You just don't expect it.
Yeah,
and then
exactly.
You're like, rah, this guy.
Exactly. And you're like, what? So he saw that I was like, I had this notebook and was writing poems or whatever. So he took me to an open mic night. Like one time we were to agree to go, like some friends and stuff, to an open mic night. Kind of like what's that blue Love Jones, the Love Jones film, kind of like them vibes, isn't it? I'd never been to one. I had no idea that they even happened in real life. Like I thought there was just movies. But I went, and I remember I read one of the poems that I had written, and people loved it, and they were like, "Yo, really feeling us?" Yeah, this. I was like, "Oh, yeah, oh, you guys like this? Okay, all right, cool." So then went to another open mic and then another one, and then I just fell in love with the process. I fell in love with it, man. I completely fell in love. I started writing more and more. You know, I never wrote to like do something with it or become something or become like, I never anticipated all of this. It was just me genuinely loving something, me genuinely like putting my energy and time and imagination to something and taking it day by day. And then when I'd go to an open mic, you know, I'd read a poem, or sometimes I'll just go to listen to other people, like, and it was just amazing. It was honestly like the most magical thing. And then, yeah, that just kind of like unfolded from one thing to another. I was literally just going to open mic for a few years, and then people started saying, "Yeah, I've heard a few of your poems. I've seen you around. Like, if you got like a blog or something, or you know," I was like, didn't really think about doing that. Is that okay? All right, cool. So then I started a little blog. Like that started getting some hits, and then like little post on Facebook and that, like, and then it's just and you know, little Twitter, it just started unraveling. And then one day, and then I did a little self-publishing thing. So I thought, all right, cool, let me try and self-publish a little thing, get a little hustle on. I didn't make any money from it, but it was nice to just like have something out there, innit? Like just do your thing and people show love. And then I didn't really know where it was going, but then one day I got an email from people who are now my agents, and we're like, you know, we've seen your poetry online. We're really interested in what you write about and all of this. Like, have you thought about writing a novel? Have you, you know, thought about X, Y, Z, whatever? And I was like, right. I mean, I've read loads of novels, like, but I've never really thought about it. I mean, I had tried to write, but I didn't really know how it's done, type of thing. So we had a meeting, and it was like, look, you know, obviously, like at that time they said, you know, we can't sign you just straight away, but like, start writing, get to a certain number of words, and then let's sit down again. We'll stay in touch, and then we'll go from there. And I was like, cool, you know, I like a challenge. I was like, all right, cool, you know, boom. So I got to it, boy, got to work. I was like, let's go. Let's go, all right. And then started writing. And then when we had the meeting, they was like, yeah, we really love this. You know, we'd love to represent you, blah, blah, blah. And I go finish the book, signed. And then honestly, since then, it's just been one thing after another. Just been trying. And then it's like, it's luck, it's serendipity, it's the universe, whatever you want to believe in, whatever you want to call it. But I really do think that, like, whatever it is that you're passionate about, you know, when you put energy to it, like, you get energy back.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, anything can happen, and it doesn't have to happen straight away. That's why I always say to, like, especially like writers, specifically, but just artists generally, like, don't think about blowing or getting to a certain stage. Do you know what I mean? Just do what you love and try to carry that with you. Because, bruv, the amount of times, when I say to you, I look back and think, I couldn't do that now. Bruv, I'll be at work all day and then travel from here to go somewhere outside of London to read a poem for 15 minutes. Because, you know, with poets, like, we don't really get a lot of time.
Yeah.
15 minutes. Read a little poem, get a 2-3 clap, well done. And then that's it. Not like, obviously we weren't paid then, like, you know.
Dip.
That was it. And then you
just have to dip. Might get a free drink.
Get the last train. A little free drink at the bar. Last train home. You make it home just in time. You sleep. You got to be up at 6 a.m. the next day, bruv. That was the love, like, that was the hustle. Do you know what I mean? You didn't think it was gonna make it into this and that, but I tell you, like, the richness of it was that thing, like that alive feeling. You know what I mean? That thing you like, you know, it's almost like it's the closest thing that I felt to dunking.
Yeah.
You know that dunking feeling. You know when you're in the air.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. No, but I'm saying, you know when you're in the air and you've got that 2-3 seconds to before you do anything. Do you know what I mean? You're just floating, and then boom, you decide, fam. Performing poetry is the closest thing
you're gonna get to
that. Yeah. So when I was feeling it, I was like, what? This is it. This is the feeling. I was just going for the feeling. And
it's
then
crazy that you explain it like that, though, man. Like, that's mad, because obviously after basketball went the way it went, to then find something to kind of replace that. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, man. That's why I loved it so much, because I was just like, bruv, I want this. Like, I want this. And realizing, because, you know, when you're playing, you think you're going to be able to dunk forever. Like, I never thought.
Everyone thinks it's going to be forever.
Wherever you're hooping, I never thought I'd be out of shape. I never thought I'd get tired. I never thought I'd, you know, be worried about my knees or whatever. Right? So then when you stop being able to do that, and then you find the next thing that you can do it in, you're like, so this isn't going to last forever as well. All right, cool. So I've got to make the most of this too, you know, and just enjoy it for what it is whilst you still have it. And then it teaches you a life lesson. You realize in life that nothing is forever. You know, nothing is forever. So you got to make the most of what you have whilst you still have it, whether that's, you know, the creative stuff, or whether that's, you know, your friends, loved ones, people who you're passionate about, like, you know, the love of your life or whatever. People neglect things. Things. Right. You got to take care of it, man. You really got to water it. It's a flower, you know.
I think the lockdowns taught people a lot of that. It has taught me that. It's taught me.
Yeah, I agree, man.
A lot about just looking at my environment and looking at the people. I've got so many. I'm grateful to have so many good people around me, and to like have such a community and such a network and family, friends, like opportunities, all this kind of stuff. It's just been mad, because like before the lockdown, I think we were all probably just preoccupied in thought, right? And then you get a minute where nothing's happening, and all you can do is figure out, you understand what I'm trying to say? And then it's like, and obviously for some of us, things were taken away. So it's like, I thought I would never gym forever. I thought that was one of them places I was like, I'm always going to be able to go gym. And something as simple as not even being able to pick up some weights, I was like, you know what I mean? When you're walking in there, you're doing the 45 instead of an hour. I'm like, boy, I could do the hour now, boy. You know what I mean? I would have took that hour. I would have took 5 minutes. You know, it's actually quite crazy. And like, going back to your story, I read this book called The War of Art, and it kind of just sounds very similar to what you're saying. When you put the energy towards what you're trying to do, all of a sudden it's like this, something just it happens. Like you can't put your finger on it. But once you're passionate about something and you actually sit down, you say you're gonna do it. Just get on with it and don't even worry about like getting money. Just do it for the right reasons, and then all of a sudden, boom.
That's it. That's it. I really think that like, you know, different people call it different things, especially now. People call it manifesting, some people call it universe, some people call it magic, some people call it prayer. Like there's different, you know, there's different modes of understanding it and all of this. But for me, energy is energy. You know, like when you walk into a room, if it's warm in that room, for some people it will be warm, for some people it will be cold, for some people it will be hot, whatever it is. But the energy of that room will be what it is. Do you know what I mean? That remains the constant. And so it doesn't lie. Like it doesn't lie. And for me, what I realized is like it's like that Native American saying, right? It's like there's two wolves who lives inside you, right? And they're at battle, right? One's positive, one's negative, right? And then, so the story is that like a grandfather is talking to their grandchild and saying there's two wolves that lives inside you, one positive, one negative, and they're fighting against each other. And the child asks, who wins? And then the grandfather answers, the one that you feed the most.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Very true.
It's like that's it. So it's like, okay, if I love something, if I want to appreciate something, if I want to appreciate people, or if I want to appreciate a partner, or, you know, I want to appreciate poetry or whatever, like feed that. Feed that. You know what I mean? Feed that. Do the thing. But if I'm thinking about making it, if I'm thinking about making money, if I'm thinking about status or blah blah blah, then you're feeding the other thing. Do you know what I mean? Like you're feeding.
It makes sense. It does. That's crazy. So like, obviously that to like have you ever found any like moments where like you felt like you didn't want to do it, like you didn't want to write?
Yeah, bruv. I kid you not. Yeah, I love writing. I absolutely love it with my whole heart. But it is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. Like it is exhausting, bruv. Like it's exhausting. The amount of discipline that you need to have. The amount of research that you need to do, and the almost like obsessive like nature of the process, right? Like I love watching or you know love watching Kobe Bryant's talks, because he talks about, and all those you know, obviously it was very sad that he passed away, but all of his basketball stories and, you know, the whole Black Mamba mentality and all of this. And I remember one of my favorite ones is when D Wade
the push-up story
tells a story, huh?
The push-up or the plank, the push-up story.
No, the All-Star game story. No, the All-Star game. So D Wade, I think this was his rookie year. He plays an All-Star game. Obviously, he's facing up against Kobe, right? He goes for a layup. He follows through and he hits Kobe in the nose, right? Kobe like hurts his nose pretty bad, and Kobe has to go out. After the game, that same night, he calls Kobe and he goes, "Oh, Kobe, man, sorry for that. You know, I didn't mean to. Blah blah blah." And then he's like, "Yeah, are you okay?" And then Kobe tells him his nose is broken. And then obviously, like, D-Wade apologizes, blah blah blah. And then Kobe goes, "No, I love it. I love
it." Sick man, bro. So crazy.
And he's like, "No, I love it. I'll see you next week." And they were playing against each other the next week. And then Kobe dropped like 50. Do you know what I mean?
That's normal.
It's like loving the process regardless of the pain.
What it is. Yeah.
Regardless of like the strain and stuff and all of this. So every time, because you're trying to reach the mountaintop, you're trying to see like the horizon. Like I don't like, you guys remember the film The Matrix, right? I don't know which one. I think it's the third one, the final one, where Trinity and Neo are riding in that ship and they're going into the final scene to fight, and then they go up to avoid the machine, and then they come out of the clouds and then they see the sun,
horizon.
the horizon. It's bare bright. It's like that. Do you know what I mean? You got to push through, push through, so you can see that horizon. And for that magic moment, you're like, yeah, this is why. And so for me, it's like writing is hard, bro. Like some, you know, got to wake up at a certain time. Especially when I'm writing a novel, my routine is bare strict, right? Do you know what I mean? Wake up at a certain time, you know, have to be read by a certain time. I've got like a certain amount of words I have to do per day, blah, 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 all of this kind of stuff. But the end result makes it all worthwhile, man. So, yeah.
That sounds like some Goggins, Kofi, like where you start
saying the same thing.
You start loving the bad things.
The pain.
You know, it's weird. It's so crazy because you're kind of almost taught sometimes. Life will cheat you, especially if you've been beaten up. If life batters you and it bruises you, you kind of get taught to just you wanna. I just want to break. That need a break mentality is gonna screw you over. You understand what I'm trying to say? You got to forget about needing a break and say, you know what, it's cool. I've got this. Like, what's next? I mean,
exactly.
Hit me. All right, cool. Hit me again. All right, cool. Hit me again.
Exactly.
You get used to that because after a while that becomes nothing. It becomes nothing. You know. But if you keep running from like the hard part and you don't want to go through the hard part, you're gonna suffer. You're basically gonna suffer.
Exactly. It's like Bruce Lee says. Life doesn't get easier, you get stronger. Do you know what I mean? And at some point, it's unfortunate to say, I mean, it's obviously, you know, take a break, etc., all of this, but realizing that, like, the bounce back, you have to have a bounce back. Do you know what I mean? That never give up bounce back. And people often mistake it. Never give up doesn't mean never take a break. It doesn't mean never rest. Right, because even as if you're going to be a pro athlete or whatever, rest time is important. So you know, you find time to rest, to recoup, to re-strategize, and then you come back. And so it's like, and when I realized that in life, there's no one's coming to save you. Like the day I realized, like, no one's coming to save you.
You sound like David Goggins right now.
Yeah, definitely.
You sound like David Goggins right now. He says that in his book, I don't know, 100 times. Ain't nobody fucking coming to save you. He's so raw, love it. Ain't nobody coming to fucking save your punk ass.
He's the next level.
Different.
Next level. Like, I wish I could be on that level.
No, but he's nuts.
It's the mental. Life is decided by the mental. And you know, there's so much that we are only learning now about our minds and our brains, that if we were taught these things when we were younger, it would have changed our lives.
How many times have we said this on the podcast? Like certain, like imagine. So I'm talking like, imagine like if you knew some of the things about your mind and some, like, just being the information you've got now, right, in some capacity. Imagine what we would have been like at 13, 14. Like,
do you know what I mean?
It would have been. We would have never lost them games. Like there was games that we would have never lost. Like, we would have never lost them games.
Listen, so when you hear like Phil Jackson stories, like Phil Jackson used to make, you know, them man do meditation and all of that.
I know. But you know what? We never saw that side of it. I wish I saw that side of it before.
Yeah,
I didn't see that side because I thought it was just like turn up with your talent and that's it. Like
that's it. Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's just not it.
And it's like when you realize as well is that talent isn't enough.
It's not enough.
Do you know what I mean? And in fact, talent is not even all of it.
No.
Like, I think for me, the biggest thing really is discipline and consistency. And I would put discipline first. Fam, if you can be, no matter what you want to do, you want to be a brain surgeon, you want to be whatever it is that you want to be, whatever. You want to lay bricks, you know, you want to be a construction worker, literally what, there is nothing in this world that's easy to do, right? Especially no matter what you want to do, if you want to be good at it, if you want to be the best at it, like not even the best, but if you want to be good, if you want to have pride in what you do, like whether you want to be whatever it is, rocket scientist or whatever, you need discipline. Like you need to be able to, get up and practice these things and work on these things day in, day out. Nothing just comes easy just like that.
No way.
But what makes it feel easier is because you love doing it. You love, and there's some people who look at what I do and say, bruv, you should sit there and read books all this boring. And I get it, like it is boring. Do you know what I mean? For me, I can't. I like that. For me, that's what switches my brain on. I don't know why. Like it's just boom, it switches. I can see stuff. Like I can really, bro, it's weird. If I told you the depths of it, like I'll go to sleep sometime, like, and I'm imagining how the next part of the book's gonna go, or this story, or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Or I'll be just daydreaming, and I'm like, even this happened the other day. I was daydreaming, and I heard the first line of like my next book. I'm like, so that's how it starts. Okay, boom. I'm like, do you know what I mean? It's so weird. I don't like. It's an amazing. Your mind is just so amazing. So amazing that if you actually sat down with it and got an opportunity to learn it and to kind of enhance capacity, listen to it. And this is why I also think, in these times now, think about the number of things that we have that distract us, that take us further and further from our own thoughts, whether it's like social media, the news, all of this stuff, movies, whatever, all of this stuff that takes us away from who we really are. We don't get to learn about ourselves. We don't get to sit ourselves and think,
Bro, question. Do you think a lot of people are scared of the sacrifice that has to be made along with the discipline and consistency?
Yeah.
Because that's what I find a lot of the time it is people are scared to lose out on some stuff. And when you made the reference to Kobe, and he was talking, I think it was like that last, I don't know if it was a TED Talk or where it was, when he was in front of a huge crowd. And he was talking about the sacrifice about missing his daughter's stuff or some of the adjustments he had to make by taking a helicopter. He finish the game, go straight to this, that, the other. What do you describe what you think about the sacrifices that sometimes need to be made and how do you think they can be overcome?
It's like this for me. It's easier to blame someone else than it is to blame yourself, right? Like, no one wants to be accountability. No one wants to be responsible for their own failure. Do you know what I mean? Like, if that thing doesn't happen, I think deep down inside your heart, you knew whether or not you worked hard enough for it, right? But the human ego, the human psyche is an interesting thing because it avoids that accountability because it's too confrontational, right? So what we do, we blame this person. We say, this teacher, or we say, it was because I started dating this girl and she or it was because this coach, and I say this from my experience, like I've been there, and I use basketball as an example, right? And I look at this, it got to a point in basketball, like obviously everyone, all growing up, we had a dream of like playing professional or whatever, but then it got to a point where like I gave up. Do you know what I mean? And I look back and I think about why I gave up, and I'd be like, but this coach said this, or I'd be like, but this club didn't, and I'm like,
the maddest thing is, let me school you, bruv. I remember walking into Park View one day, and this is when I got the upgrade because I was playing for my local school. And then Jean, Jean.
Yeah,
Jean was already playing with this guy, right?
Yeah.
And Jean was like, you know what? We're beating up local school teams and that. You're gonna have to let's go and play for a club team. I said, all right, cool. Brought me to White Heat. This dude's doing reverses off one leg. man's doing that. One of the first guys I've seen do a reverse off one leg, and I'm thinking, bruh, like it's nothing. I remember you and Michael. Michael was training as well. Do you remember Michael?
Yeah.
Michael had hops before he got he got injured as well. Donnies were just doing these reverses in the little corner, just training up, and I'm stepping in thinking, boy, I've got bounce, but she. I was like, because in school I'm dunking, like I'm that guy that's like 14, 15 dunking. I was dunking from early, right?
Yeah.
because every break time, which we had like a break at 11, and a break at 12, and then after school we were training as well. And each and every one of those breaks, every day, consistently, I was doing it from like the age of year 7. I would try every day, even through the summer. I would climb over the school gates, just practicing on this crazy stuff. And then you get to that point where you actually meet other like athletes who are probably like on a different level, right? And you're like, shit. And then coming to White Heat was that moment for me where I was just like, you're not the only one. It's like discovering like,
but you know what's mad? But you know what's mad? I remember when you came in, and then when you started dunking, I was thinking, shit.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I'm gonna have to up my levels because he's coming in. Like, I've been here, and he's coming in just. I'm like,
you know what? I didn't really even think people like thought of it like that. I thought it was. I always saw myself as like pretty average, and then when I got to HC, when I got to Hackney Community College, and I was playing for Tony. I mean, Tony stopped the because Tony stopped the session one day, and he was like, and I threw down, and he was like, "That's how you fucking dunk." And I was like, "This is Tony. You know, this is like this guy used to coach towers. He's like, that's how you
do
it. Throw it down. That's what you do." I was like, oh, like maybe I'm onto something here. But at this point, I'm like 17 years old. So if I had that realization from maybe about 14, it could have been a different story. But you know, it is what it is. You know what I mean? And like I said, we didn't have some of the knowledge, and you kind of expected you were going to have those abilities forever. And
exactly. You didn't know what you was working with. Imagine being a teenager and you run across a gold mine, but you've never seen gold before.
You've never seen gold before.
How you know you're standing on treasure? Like, how are you gonna know? You know, and I think that's a lot of the time that that's kind of what we went through. But like, it's like, like for me, I remember giving up on basketball. I remember blaming other people, saying, "Oh, it's because of this, because of that, whatever." But you know, it's because I got injured or this or blah. But it wasn't like, no, that wasn't. You could still walk, bruv. Like it wasn't. You do you know what I mean? And then for me, the process was really sitting down, having a hard, long conversation with myself, looking in the mirror, and be like, "No, you gave up. You gave up, and that's okay. That's okay." Do you know what I mean? But then I was like, "Oh yeah, you know what? Okay, let me take accountability for that." But then when I came to find my passion in writing, I'm like, "Oh, I've been given a second chance. I'm gonna ride this thing all the way until the wheels fall off." You know what I mean? I'm gonna ride this. So I'm like, all right, cool. Let me make sure that I do this writing thing. So as long as I've got things going on in my head and stuff that I can put down, I'll never say that like, you know, oh, I can't do it or I won't do it or blah blah blah. Like and this is how I feel about where, you know, my writing and the direction that it's going in is, when I stop writing, it won't be because I'm not motivated anymore. It won't be because, you know, there's no one who wants to publish my work or anything like that. It will be because I want to.
Do
you know what I mean? Like I am satisfied with what's happening, and I can lay it down. And then if I find another thing that I'm passionate about, we'll move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? Because there's multiple things that we can be passionate about.
Do you find that, like, because you read so much, or your parents got you involved in reading so much, it was easier for you to have the maturity to have that conversation after basketball wasn't a thing? To then,
I think so. Yeah, I think reading opened my mind a lot. Like, I'm not gonna lie, man. There are certain books that I read at such a formative stage, flipping knocked me out, bro. You know, so certain books you're like, that feels a little personal, like, do you know what I mean?
Is he talking to me?
He's written about me. What the hell's going on? You know, and especially as like, you know, certain authors where like, you know, this is a book written by someone who you don't know, you've never met, you probably will never meet, who's had incredibly different experiences than yours, but like, they're talking about exactly how you've been feeling. Do you know what I mean? So then for me, it really made me really sit with myself and be like, all right, cool. You know, you say this, all right, but what are you really doing? And it's something that I do to this day, like try and keep myself accountable. Because even now, you know, there's certain books and research that I need to be doing. Sometimes I'm being lazy. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, so I really like every now and then I have check-ins with myself, and I'm like, but are you really doing what you say? Are you really making the most of it? Are
Like
you really
checking in on yourself? Yeah,
yeah. And I think it's important.
How much research goes into each book?
I mean, it depends on the book, but it depends on the book and the type of research as well.
Yeah.
So let's say with my first novel, No Place to Call Home, loads of reading different books. A lot of them were books that I read before and I'm revisiting. Loads of documentaries and stuff on YouTube, just watching videos, listening to music. A lot of like conversations with elders, you know. So what the book allowed me to do for the first time was actually properly sit down with my parents and be like, right, tell me your whole life from primary school, everything. Listen, it's so mad, yeah. So that kind of that questioning, I found out stuff about my parents that I never thought I knew. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, my mum was born in the village. Yeah, village is a village girl. Proper village girl, yeah. And like, so when she was talking about growing up in a village and stuff, so there's this, let's say, traditional story she was saying, but for her, she experienced it with her own two eyes. Yeah. So in the village, and largely in the village where she lived, there was like houses there was like a local river, right? And by that river, you know, people collect water. Some people would swim in it, washing it, whatever. Just, you know, as kids do. But there was loads of crocodiles, right? So each family had a crocodile that kind of belonged to their family, and each family had like.
So wait. This is in Congo.
This is in Congo, yeah, in the village. So families, and I want to write about this story properly.
You know what you need to do? I think at some point you need to talk to some people that don't know about how big the Congo is. Like, you need to.
Congo's huge. Congo's
do a little section after this, when we get a chance. Just express them how uncharted it is as well. Like how dense it is. It's crazy.
Mad. I can tell you a million stories, but it is mad. This is probably the most reasonable story out of the mad one. It gets mad.
Hold on. I think dinosaurs are in the Congo, I swear.
Like, fam, there's like gorillas that are 25 feet tall, bros.
Bro, like, that's some scary. No,
it's insane.
That's some Indiana Jones thing, bro.
There's undiscovered animals there.
I believe that.
Yeah,
because the forest is so dense there.
It's ridiculous.
The Europeans gave up. They couldn't hack it.
Well, they couldn't. Yeah, literally.
They couldn't hack it.
And so the crocodile story. Yeah. So each family had a crocodile that belonged to them, right? And how that was represented. So each family also had like a family cloth, right? That was like their traditional cloth. And they would tie that cloth around the crocodile that belonged to them. And that crocodile was kind of like the protector of the family. So, and this is my mum telling me, like, do you know what I mean? And she's saying she sees with her own eyes. So one day, there's a little girl playing by the river, right? She's by herself, whatever. And everyone's just kind of like generally passing by. Suddenly, in the distance, there's one crocodile swimming fast towards the little girl. Little girl's not paying attention, she can't see it. People see it and start screaming. Like, my mum's there, innit? She's in the hoo-ha, like, she's screaming, there's a crocodile coming, crocodile coming. Fam, there's one of the elders from the other side now, who's got his crocodile, yeah? He does one thing or says one thing or whatever, boom, another crocodile comes and defends the girl in front of the crocodile that was gonna attack. These two crocodiles start fighting mid-water, like
yeah.
And then they disappear into the water, boom. And then someone goes in and grabs the little girl, and the old man just walks off like. And it's like, and this, listen, these are animals. A crocodile's gonna eat a human. Why would a crocodile stop another crocodile from eating? You didn't do that. Do you know what I mean? They're carnivorous, like. And then the way my mum was explaining it, I was there like.
Were you skeptical? You
know what? When at the start of the story, I was right because Western thinking, blah blah blah, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
Obviously, I can't explain it, but I was skeptical. But when she started going into really specific detail in terms of who was there, what they were doing, the little girl, what it sounded like, the crocodiles, the imagery, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm a storyteller. I can tell when I know, like I've been in situations on stage or whatever where I'm making stuff up.
Yeah.
That's my job.
Yeah.
Like I make stuff up for a living. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I know when someone's making stuff up. And I was like, nah. Nah, this is not made up. So yeah, that was wild to me. And bruv, there's so many more, because for me, especially in terms of when it comes to Congo, I've always been interested by researching the traditions and the ancestral stuff and all of that. And when I tell you, there's a absolute richness of stories that you wouldn't even believe is humanly possible. Do you know what I mean? Because the imagination that we've been given, or we've been placed upon us as a result of a Western society, is limited based on what you can understand from that part of the world and those traditions. Do you know what I mean? Like, imagine if I like, all right, imagine if like telepathy was real, right? And you could train to read each other's minds, right? If I say that to you now, you'd be like, bro, you're moving a bit mad. Are you all right? You'd probably check what more I'm taking, innit?
Man's on the spice and that.
Watch out for him. But if I say that to you at 5 years old and you believe it, right? And there's two of you, and then you start to practice, and then you learn the skill of communication between you two. And then you're able to do it. And then now you come here and then you realize you're somewhere where no one else can do it. But not only that it's wrong to even do it. Are you going to keep doing it, or are you going to try and hide it? And then when you try and hide it, you eventually forget that you have that skill, right? And then you learn that there's like other people in other places that have been doing it. And there's stories of like African American twins from during like slavery times who communicated telepathically. These like they're all like, for me, the human mind is undiscovered in so many ways, and I really think that our ancestors had tapped into something mystical, magical, that now, because of technology or because of colonialism or because people look down on African and Caribbean culture, like they're not seeing it as valuable.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. Like, do you feel like us as being kind of raised, I might as well say, because I've been here since I've been 11 years old. Do you feel like we've lost, because of obviously us leaving the continent or leaving the Caribbean or whatever, we've lost like our connection with some of that, and some of the knowledge is also kind of being lost because a lot of people on the continent are looking towards the West.
100%.
I definitely feel like obviously there's not enough being written down, or there's not enough that people can actually. I mean, you'd have to go looking for it, basically. If you want to find it, you'd have to go looking for it. It's not readily available, so it makes it easier for people to kind of veer off course or whatever. So like, do you think like we've lost like our connection kind of with all of that?
I think it's like this, it's waves, and I think there's times where it dips low, and maybe or generations where it dips low, and generation where it can come back up and so forth. I think we're losing a lot of it, but I also think that it's not gone. There's potential for it to come back, and it will find those who are looking for it. Like, and everyone will find one way or another, whether it's through a conversation, whether it's through someone guiding, etc., it will come to you. And I'll give you an example. I remember when Black Panther came out.
Yeah.
Was that 2017?
Yeah.
And
hey,
I mean,
mad.
Black Panther was dope. Mad, isn't it? It was mad.
That was the Avengers Assemble moment for me, because
listen, I mean,
the
that was
way black folks were just, even me. There was a picture of me DJing in a club, and the photographer like hit me with the pose, and I was like, yeah, and I was like this, and I was like, ah. You know when after you clock, you're like, ah. I look back at the picture and I was like, why am I'm in front of the decks and I'm like this? It's mad.
That's see now that right there, yeah. Now in the movie they have what's the purple plant thing again? By the vibranium, right? That's the Earth, yeah.
Yeah.
So now obviously there's the scenes where Chala goes in the ground and then goes to the ancestral realm. Ancestral realm, talks to his ancestors, comes back, blah blah, all that stuff, yeah. And like the vibranium, the earth is considered sacred, and all of that too, right? So everyone in the movie, like, we all loved the movie, whatever. Now that made me think back to my childhood. So there was something that we used to do that was basically my parents used to do for us, right? So when we came, so what happens is, in our traditions, our village land is considered sacred, right? You don't build over the land, you don't destroy the land, like you don't uproot a tree or a flower or anything. Everything is sacred. They're all living, right? So one of the things that you do is you take a bit of the dirt, the soil, and you take it with you, right? So my parents would keep that in like a jar type thing. And what they would do is they would take like a small amount, like a rock size, put it in a bit of cloth, and we used to wear that around our waist as protection, right? Like so that, you know, no harm comes your way, all of this kind of stuff. And obviously as a kid, like, you're like, oh, this is long, man. None of my other friends do this. You know, trying to explain that.
Westernized, like, man.
You know, you try and hide it. You know, change rooms is peak because you got to go like
Yeah.
It's mad, isn't it? Like, those times when we were playing ball, I was definitely still wearing it.
Yeah,
still wearing this, definitely. And
you kept that secret, bro.
But listen, because how do I even explain it, bro?
Hey, bro, what even is that?
Because I don't remember seeing any of that.
Fam, I hid it. I would hide like it. So it's just like having a rope around your waist type of thing, yeah. And the earth is like embedded into the rope, right? And then also alongside that, the water of the village, the river of the village, was also considered sacred. So you would take some of the water with you, and to protect you wherever you go. So then you know, I get to about 16, 17, and I'm like, oh, I'm not a boy anymore. This is long, like, you know, time to cut it off, whatever. You get older and you kind of forget about it. And then about early 20s and then onwards, I was like, you start asking questions and you start learning more. So then, like, when Black Panther came out and all that stuff about vibranium and this in the soil and whatever, I was like, oh. And then when I was telling people, this is what we used to do, they're like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, bro, this is a normal practice in our culture. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's something that's standard. And, you know, so when you're seeing T'Challa, when he's weak, he takes the vibranium thing, he drinks it to get stronger. Like, it was the same thing. The water is considered sacred. You drink the water to get stronger. All of this, protection, whatever. And like, so you see, our traditions are so rich, but we're not really taught about them. But when you rediscover, you realize, yo, there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that we need to learn as well. Like, do you know what I mean? And hopefully we can get back to it.
Yo, across the bottom, you see Leopold II. Just your thoughts. Just says Leopold's thoughts.
Okay, so Leopold, for those who may not know, Leopold II was
the devil,
the king, bruv. Basically, boy.
In his dark screen, the devil.
Basically, whatever you thought Hitler was, multiply that by 2, you get Leopold. But
for rubber as well.
For rubber, for all rubber, basically the entire, whatever wealth that Belgium might have as a country is because of the resources that was exploited
in Congo.
In Congo, and because of Leopold II. But I'll tell you this: so rather than just talking about the atrocities that he's done. By the way, there's a really interesting documentary called White King, Red Rubber, Black Death. It's on YouTube. It's amazing. It will tell you all about the history. It's quite a difficult watch, a very difficult watch. So
is it quite in depth?
White King, Red Rubber, Black Death.
All right.
So it goes very deeply into that history. But I'll tell you a story. So rather than just talking about the atrocities and all of that, which, you know, wherever, I'll tell you a slightly alternative story, right? So there's a kind of folklore of a story of a man called Bakanza, which is like an ancestor. And what the story was is that when the colonizers came, so Bakanza, he used to pray to his ancestral kind of religion, his ancestral faith, right, and his ancestral practices. So the missionaries, colonial missionaries, they came, they converted everyone away from their traditional practices to like Catholicism, apart from him. He refused, right? But they kept beating him, and making a show of him in front of everyone. But he refused. He refused to convert, until eventually he was killed, right? And then he died, and he became a kind of like martyr, someone who was like strong in their beliefs and about their traditions. Now, when King Leopold sent the missionaries, the colonial missionaries, to Congo to convert them, he sent a letter alongside them with the lead missionary. And the letter basically said that these people have their own civilizations, they have their own cultures, they have their own traditions, but the plan is to deceive them into accepting ours as superior than theirs. Like, this is historical documentation, it's sourced, it's facts, like everything is there, but you just won't know it's there if you're not looking, like, you know what I mean? And so when this whole process of colonialism happened, and you know, Belgium and France become like the authority, especially in Congo, and then we're taught that our own cultures and our own traditions are bad, but theirs is superior, it's not by accident. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's actually part of strategic design. And so when you see our own selves, like especially our generation and younger generation, etc., moving away from our cultures, we have to think about why. Like, why don't we know certain things about certain things that's happened? You know, what's being kept from us? What else don't we know? Like, and for me, you know, I try to read as much as possible, but there's still so much that I don't know. And I'm thinking, hold on. When, you know, you lot know my full name, yeah? You know my name means Black Magic. You basically know that, right? Like, you know the amount of people who won't speak to me because of my first name.
I believe that.
Like, you get shook. You get shook. They hear it in Black Magic and they're like, what? They're like, nah.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because that's how negative the association is that's been implanted because of colonialism, because of the miseducation, all of that. That anytime they hear that something that might, they're like, no, their brain goes into shutdown. Now imagine we didn't have that. Imagine there was an openness and an education about what we practice, what we believe, what we knew about ourselves. It'd be so much more empowering. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I went to Haiti time ago. They practice that normally. Yeah, ages ago. Haiti is wonderful, bruv.
Some woman from Haiti added me on Instagram the other day, and I had to quickly block and delete her because I think I had one of those shutdown moments. Because the way
Haitians are powerful.
Bro, like this,
Bam.
and it was, I don't know what it was, but I was like, the page. Listen, I'll forward you the page so you can have an idea. And I took some screenshots because I said it's either someone trying to get at me, or and I was like, listen, before I get got, I'll block this, and just in my mind, I never saw it, and I'm gonna move on. I couldn't believe it. In the middle, it was like one morning in the middle of work, boom! I got like I was, had a break. I'm looking for Instagram, and it's like Haitian witch doctor on Instagram. I said, oh, I said, no. I just quickly drew for the block.
No, you know what? But the thing is, this is the thing, right? In real terms, there's some people who move mad with it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know
100%.
Just like in all religions, I really think that when it comes to religion and spirituality, it's a pathway to a higher consciousness, right?
Yeah.
But unfortunately, human beings
abuse that.
We get in the way because of ego, because of power, whatever. So if you look at all religions, Christianity's had a done in madness, Islam has done in madness, like every religion, Buddhism, there's practicing Buddhists who've done in madness. Do you know what I mean? So you will see, and human ego is human ego. So you will see people who, use that, and that was probably someone trying to use it. Do you know what I mean? To try and move mad with you. So you probably did the right thing by blocking them. But
Haitians are in tune. Haitians are really in tune with everything around
them. This is why I say, don't go through people, connect to the source. Right? So in terms of Congo, so like let's say for example, how in terms of my ancestral background, how my ancestors conceptualized God was through they would call God Nzambiapungu Tulendo, right? Which basically meant that everything in everything, right? That God was everything around you, but also everything in you as well, right? And there's no point.
You know what? That just makes much more sense to me.
Do you know
just
what I mean?
Hearing that, right? That sounds like I can resonate with that. That makes sense. It makes sense to me. But like obviously, because coming from the Caribbean, like we're far. Even though we're still black folks, we're still far.
Yeah.
I still feel like there needs to be this connection between African people and Caribbean people where we get retaught some of the, because we got in the Caribbean, it still exists. The Haitians, there's other people that practice, but just hearing you say that, I'm just like, shit. I don't know why that makes sense, but it makes sense.
So this is the thing, and we imagine now we started seeing. Imagine we stopped seeing God as something outside of us, or rather something inside of us, right? And we stop seeing it as a separate entity, but more so rather as an entity that's part of ourselves and also each other. Do you know what I mean? Like it's also the air that you breathe. It's fam. There's some books I'll post the books. I'll share. I'll share on my Instagram later.
Yes.
There's some books out there. When I was reading these, I'm like, yo, what the fuck? I'm talking about it now, but at the start, bro, I couldn't sleep for weeks, bro. Listen, I mean, I'm talking about it comfortably, right? But don't get it twisted. It was difficult. There was bare moments where I'd be having some mind lapsing, out of body experiences. My brain's just like, no, what the. But
you're gonna have to send these books my way, bro. I need to read.
I will send you, and I will happily send you. And the thing is, it just gets to a certain level where it's like, like you're saying, oh, that just makes sense. Because it's like your first conscious is everything that you've been taught is true, fighting against it, right? And then when you can move past that, and you move to acceptance of what the universal knowledge is, you're like, that makes sense, because your spirit already knows. Your spirit already knows truth. It has universal knowledge. So when if like as our ancestors understood, God is everything in everything. So it's everything in you, everything in your mother, everything in your friends, your loved ones, whatever, in the trees.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time. Like say it in the language and then explain it one more time. You just got to say it one more time, just so they know.
So Zambia Pungu Tulendo. Right. So what that roughly translates to is everything, the God that is in everything, like the everything in everything.
Right.
And you are also the everything, and that includes you.
Right.
So if the everything is in everything, and you are also part of everything, then you are also everything in everything.
Mind blowing.
And then, so now, right, look at this scientifically. Yeah. What does that describe? That describes the atom. Like, and cells. It's science. We are made up of 1 billion cells. And that's when you see, oh, okay, you know, human beings share genetic makeup with X or Y or Z, or, you know, especially if you, I love to listen to astrophysics, man. Like, you know, there's the Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast. I love listening to that. Half of it
that guy goes over my head all the time, man.
Every time. He goes over my head way too many times.
I love it.
I'm sitting there like, what?
I don't understand.
I got to pause for a second and then re-listen, and I'm like,
I don't understand. But I love
shit.
it.
Like,
but you like, but the thing is, when you learn that, oh, that's also just science.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then and what's interesting is there's the Higgs boson experiment, right, or the Higgs boson particle, where the same particle can be in 2 different places.
Charges. They have 2 different charges, yeah.
Like,
It's
and then you're like,
shifting neutrons out of place and stuff like that, yeah.
And you're like, hold on. So if the same particles and all of that are in us, and these particles can have be in 2 different places, and there's these, especially in Congo, there's bad traditional stories of people being in 2 different places at the same time, right? And you're like, wait, hold on, is that possible? Like, are we at the beginnings of something that we already knew? Is science rediscovering something that our ancestors already knew? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'll give another example, and this one was the most mind-blowing for me when I read it at the time, right? So for the longest time in Western civilization, they thought the world was flat, right? Until about 1500s, and Galileo came through and was like, you know what, you man, the world might be round, you know, here's why. And they done him off.
They tried to end him, boy.
They ended. They was like, this guy's mad. How can the world be round? Here's flat, I'm standing, it's not a ball, blah, 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 right? They've done him. But, so there's, in West Africa, there's an ethnic group called the Dogon, right? And they have what's known as the Sirius mystery. The Dogon have existed, the peak of their civilization, and since they existed, was 3000 BC, so that's 3000 years before Jesus Christ was born, yeah? In all their documentation and stuff, they show not just that the world is round, but they show our solar system, they show the Sirius solar system and the galaxies as well, and it's all mapped out. The Sirius solar system was only discovered by NASA in like 1990s. And so it's like, there's a book on it. There's a book on it by a scientist called Robert K.G. Temple, which is, so let me explain this book, yeah? So Robert K.G. Temple, he's like, yo, how did these uncivilized West African group figure out like all these galaxies and stuff without having modern technology? It makes no sense. So he studies them, blah, 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 explains what they knew, all of this, but he still can't understand how they were able to do that. So he ends the book by saying that they must have been visited by aliens or something. That's how mad.
Bro, have you ever been to Egypt?
Has to be.
Have you ever been to Egypt?
That's another thing, man. Like, I was just gonna say, the Egyptians as well.
No,
Like,
if you go to Egypt, I'm kidding you not. No, go into the desert in Egypt. They actually take you on these excursions, yeah? These men have it's pitch black. They have no way of navigating back but the stars.
Fam.
But the stars. And these men will get you back pinpoint to where you need to be.
Sis, have you been? You've been Egypt?
Yeah, bruv. That's the only reason I saw it with my eye.
Did you stand
pitch black in the middle of the desert, fam? I was
did
like,
you stand outside the pyramids?
No, I was in Sharm actually. I didn't go to Cairo.
You should have took the trip. When you stand
Bruv,
outside,
no, but this time it was like all that civil unrest, man. They had to barricade us. I was like, nah, I'm not in the barricade. I'm out the cage, bro.
We came in shortly after that. We had a brother with a looked like a P90, semi-automatic gun tucked into his blazer. I remember one guy came up. I was outside, and one guy came up to beg, and he was telling the guy to dip because obviously we're tourists. The guy didn't want to dip, so we just slipped him hey, big man. The guy took off. This guy just took off. But when you stand outside outside one of those base stones, and you really look up at these things, and you think, I remember just standing there for at least 30 minutes, just looking at the whole thing, thinking, how did they do this? Like, how? Them base stones are bigger than your house, bro. Like, you could have a 3 stories house. The base stone itself is like huge. It's massive. And they've got several of them for the base. And I'm just symmetrically put. And apparently they were supposed to be limestone. So it was all white, smoothed out. Over time, obviously, they've lost some of it. But when you see the size of these stones, you could put an elephant next to these stones and they're still bigger than the elephant.
You know, there was an experiment in I think it's the 70s or 80s by a group of Japanese architects. Japanese, like Japan architecture is one of the most advanced architecture in the world. And so what they did was they tried to figure out and recreate how the ancient Egyptians built the pyramids without using any modern mechanical technology. Like they couldn't do it. They tried to still do it using modern technology and mechanics, and they still couldn't do it. Like, and then there's so many layers, right? So like even with and now there's a massive erasure in terms of like ancient Egypt, in terms of like the Black African side of ancient Egypt, right? So there's more pyramids in South Sudan, than there are in Egypt, right? Yeah. And the Egyptian river flows upwards, so from south to north rather than north to south. And so people, a lot of theorists believe that essentially pyramid building culture started off in what is known as Kush, which would be like South Sudan and Sudan, and then moved upwards. And so it's like when you see some of the artwork and stuff, or which is even more mad, it's like on the Sphinx and stuff, and on loads of the Egyptian statues, what do you notice as common? Exactly the nose. Yeah. That's why you can't listen.
When you go and you actually look at it, I was told that. So the Sphinx, if you dig deep, I don't know if it's true or not, but when the Europeans discovered it, they shot the nose off it to keep it hush. So they blew the nose off, because if you look at the Sphinx, like a modern day picture of the Sphinx, the nose is missing. Like it's this, you know what I mean. And a lot of the art, and I remember being in, I remember saying to my partner at the time, I said, listen, why is the nose missing from half of these things? Like something seems a bit fishy. And as you dig in and dig in, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or whatever, but I can't really see how on a continent where it's predominantly black folks and the people that were there that were white came centuries later, you're telling me that in the short time that the the white folks that were there, they built this empire, but they just don't remember how they did it, and there's no evidence that they did it either. It doesn't make any sense.
This is why those asking those questions and actually like being able to explore the roots of like the knowledge sources of things other than from the places that you're taught them. Do you know what I mean? Like when you do independent research, because say for instance, there's the big museum in Paris called the Louvre.
Yeah.
They've got a massive
a whole wing of the stuff.
It's ridiculous.
I've been. It's ridiculous. They've got a bath, like what looks like a bathtub. So clearly, Europeans must have clocked that and went back and took it back for their own. I've got the pictures of it. Like I went through then. It took me hours to get through this stuff. I was quite fascinated. But
all the noses are all the noses on the statues gone, bare, gone. Even the little ones gone.
Even the small ones. Even the small ones. That's what And I've listened. I knew it. I thought I was going mad. Thank you. I thought I was going mad. Because at the time, obviously, I'm saying it, right? And I'm like, I'm not like an angry, crazy black guy. This just seems odd. This just seems odd to me. It just seems odd that you get all of these paintings and stuff that are perfectly preserved, but you get some artifacts from the continent and they're just so powerful, but the bit that kind of defines them is missing.
It's gone. Yeah.
And I'm just like, something just seems a bit offish to me, man. It doesn't seem legit. Even when you look at what's his face? Yeah, King Tut's. When you look at his mask, let me tell you something. You see that mask, yeah? I said it to someone the other day. I went into that room where the mask is. You're not allowed to take photos. So, and at the time, I followed the rules. I probably should have took a photo, but to be honest, I'm kind of glad I didn't take it at the same time.
Yeah, you gotta respect it.
When you look at this thing, it's mesmerizing. It's mesmerizing, and you can see the features. You can see that's the one thing that that can't be hidden. You can see the features on this solid gold mask, and you're just looking at it. You want to move on because other tourists want to look, but they're just staring at it. It's incredible. Like seriously, like I've never seen anything like that in my life. In my life.
Now imagine, when you're 12, 13 years old, and everything that we was miseducated about when it comes to racism or African and Caribbean culture or black culture, that that you didn't have books, you didn't have this, blah blah blah, no civilization, monkeys, ape, whatever, and animalistic, all of this stuff, all the stereotypes. Now imagine you were taught about that.
From the get-go, from
the jump, where you're like,
it'll be a different story.
It'll be a different story. You'll talk differently about yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like the way you'd be empowered, and you're like, hold on, the problem. I'm not the problem.
No,
and I think that there's so many of us who grow up feeling and thinking like we're the problem before we realize that it's actually not us, that the system's set up against us in a certain way, and we have to learn how to navigate things a bit differently. And so it's just like,
actually, what?
Yeah.
Talking about Egypt, I don't know if you but there's this story. I don't know how true it is. Again, like these are just little things that I've read on the off chance when I pick up a little information that kind of hits me. So apparently there was this ridiculous library in Egypt. And obviously, one of the European conquerors came through. I don't know if it was the Romans or
Alexandria, Library of Alexandria,
and just burnt the thing down.
Yep.
In my head, I'm thinking, now as a book reader, I'm thinking I would have loved to just couple books from that bad boy just to see. Imagine the information that was in there. Like imagine the information that could have been there. Like seriously, like that was definitely whoever gave the order to do that. May burn him.
Also,
I mean, like, seriously.
Do you know the amount of people like who are descendants of people who just pillaged it and then took some of that stuff, and some of that stuff is in some old guy's attic somewhere.
Do
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so even, which is really interesting about like the library particularly. All right, so you lot remember Timbuktu, yeah?
Yes, yes, I've heard something like this.
When you were younger, did you believe Timbuktu was a real place, or were you kind of
No,
thought like
no, because of how frequently
it was like a saying. People
like,
like
right, Timbuktu.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. So growing up, it was kind of like Timbuktu was this almost like the Bermuda Triangle type of thing. Is it real? Is it not real? Ooh, like we don't know. Not like, and then you start reading, like, no, Timbuktu's a real place.
So I've heard.
Like, and it's got the biggest historical library in the world, and the library had over 250 scrolls. Because this is the thing, not even books sometimes, scrolls. Like sciences, agriculture, like astrology, everything. And it's been tried to be conquered so many times as well. Like
someone said they identified this fire that doesn't go out when water hits it. It's crazy because remember apparently they used to use it at sea when they were attacking other ships. So
later
they would lash the other ships with this fire, burn them down, because obviously if you're at sea, it's quite easy to put a fire out. You know what I mean? So they kind of just figured out a way to just let this, whatever it was, whatever chemicals or whatever elements they used, that's lost now. No one knows how to. Imagine if we still had that kind of tech.
That's not tech though. That's nature.
Well, yeah, of course.
That's these men that just knew how to spin things just to
imagine
make it
that
as
would mean
potent as
like
possible.
for us, like trying to get to different planets, because we need to use. There's no other way unless you use like you burn a fuel. We don't have the technology right now. So imagine if we had a fire that just wouldn't go out. Imagine if we knew how to. We would get to other planets. Put it that way, like, and it wouldn't even be a problem. That is such a valuable thing. All of that kind of stuff.
There's so many things. It's quite unfortunate, really. There's so many. If our current lives weren't so like based on just having to survive, right? Like, and that just means in the basic sense, like pay rent, food, like that kind of stuff. Like, there are so many things that we could learn and do or learn about
100%.
that would move us forward. That like our lives would be transformed tomorrow. Like, do you know what I mean? But unfortunately, think about whatever gifts. I mean, I really think we live amongst geniuses. Like, we have some like real geniuses amongst us, right? And think about the person who just never had the opportunity to actualize their genius. Do you know what I mean?
Or to even
like,
be taught.
Or even to be taught. Like, and what happens to that genius? The people are talking about, oh, okay, you're going to discover the cure for science or blah, blah, blah. Mate, like, it could be that kid on the block. It could be that kid who has to, work on the farm at 10 years old, like, and will never be able to access an education. So it's like, there's so many geniuses and all of that. But this is the thing with the world is there's a massive power imbalance. And, so there's really people who are trying to take away from our power, from our collective power as well.
100%. Yo, hold on. We've been going for an hour and 45 minutes.
I know.
We had a pre-talk before.
I didn't even expect the conversation going to this,
Fam, it always happens. It always happens. Believe me.
It gets interesting after.
It always happens.
I love it.
We end up here.
Yeah, we do. Really quickly. Actually, not really quickly. Let's take another 5 minutes. We haven't even touched on your what's it called? Your mask off, masculinity redefined. We haven't even touched on that.
We're gonna have to do a part 2 or something, man. Let's do a part 2 later on.
But it's interesting because we had CK, a person I work with. CK is non-binary transgender. Maddest conversation actually really blew both of our minds as to what we discovered, and it was interesting because I don't know if you know she was tuned into this. They were tuned into this. I always get it wrong still, like I work with them. But just quickly just dip into that. What made you write that? Because I never forget we had in our boys chat, the hairline group. Sorry, I had to bait up, I don't care. I don't care. We had the maddest talk. I remember what's it called? I come back 500 messages between all of us, and we're talking about gender fluidity in Africa and like how we're doing this. Like, And honestly, I was like, I swear that conversation there is what made him write this book.
Fam, you know what? I think around about when we had that conversation was actually when I was probably researching the book, but didn't realize it was going to turn into the book, right? And just out of just general reading and all of this kind of stuff. And one thing particularly that I learned, so especially in terms of like Congo culture, this is how we conceptualize gender, right? So everyone, gender was conceptualized as fluid. Every human being has their own unique balance, if you will, of feminine and masculine gender, or fluid of whatever their energy is, right? And so that was told, the way that was expressed or told was through like original folklore. So the original creation folklore story that's taught in like our ancestral Congo culture was that the very first human being was a human being called Kimahungu, right? And that human being had both female energy, was both man and woman, had both female energy and feminine energy in one entity, like one being. What then that being decided to do was to divide itself and then continue dividing itself to populate the earth, right? And then each basically continued division, each person had a balance of female and male energy that they had to find their life partner to then balance and come together as one to form the original human being. So how that was shown was that your left hand was called your liboko ya mwasi, which is your woman's hand, and your right hand was called your liboko ya mobali, which is your man's hand. And so
which kind of sense seated at the right hand. Oh, makes sense.
Right. And then so little things like that, it's like, yo, imagine we grew up that was normal. Like, and then when we look at like, especially gender and sexuality, a lot of these concepts were very normal in African cultures throughout. But then what happened was colonialism happened. Like we were talking about King Leopold earlier. Colonialism happened. They said, what? You man believe in this? What, gender fluid? What? No. It's man or woman. That's it. Oh, sexuality, this? No. Like heterosexuality.
Straight gay.
You know what I mean? Everything else you're going to hell for. Like, it's evil or da-da-da-da-da. And then that happens. That is indoctrinated into us for 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, 400 years, 500 years. We forget that we're 500 years later, right? 500 years removed from the original source of how we saw things in a different way. So then we come to the point now where we're like, oh, this is wrong or that is wrong or whatever. But you know what's interesting is we can all look back, especially as like African, Caribbean people, we can all look back in our cultures and communities and we say, if you're smart, you'd have clocked that auntie who, you know, was a bit different, wasn't really just an auntie, you know? Or that uncle that was a bit, I can't put my words on it, but as a kid, I just knew there was a bit different. Like, certain things start adding up. Do you know what I mean? Like, and then you're like, oh.
As you're saying, I'm like, oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, so they were, okay. That was what was going on, you know, but it just wasn't out. It just wasn't open, you know. And so we act like these things are, it was never had, or nah, like it is very normal in our culture. But then also it's like, I'll say, in terms of like us and our experience, there are things that have been happening that are normal that we just don't know about. And I'd say for me, like as Congolese growing up, there's certain things as Congolese as we do as Congolese men. I mean, Kofi, you know what you've been around me in this mode more.
Yeah, but it's what it is.
Look at the Congolese men and we dance, right? Like with the waves and all of that. That, fam, I remember growing up here. So when we was around our Congolese, when we went to Congolese parties, that was normal. All the guys would be doing the waist movements, whatever, yeah. fam, if you try to do that anywhere else, they'll be like, "Oh, that's gay, bro. That's gay. What you doing? What you doing?"
Listen,
do you know what I mean?
But
it's only now people are starting to learn a bit more about the culture and be like, "Oh, so that's
if you can move like that, you're the done."
That's
what it's like now. That's what it's like.
So
move like that.
Because I imagine when we were 10 years old, that's what it was like. You guys are trying to move like that. You're trying to move like that. But that's seen as feminine outside of our culture. But inside of our culture, that's seen as masculine.
Normal.
You know what I mean? So then who really decides what's feminine or masculine? Like, what's the real norm?
I wish you both was on that combo, bro. Crazy.
But
crazy.
It's kind of it's gotten too far now. Like, we're so far from it because, especially for sort of like, just to highlight like Caribbean culture for a second. And I mean, Africa is probably worse, but in the Caribbean, it's violent, very violent. In some places where it's just like, what? Nah, they'll end you, bro. Like, people just won't accept it, and it just won't ever be a thing. So, and you grow up just understanding that, nah, you don't go there. You know, like you just don't go there. So, I mean, probably like there's just like, so I mean, I can imagine because I've seen guys that are from the Caribbean, and it's only when they move to like places like the UK or they move to like Europe that they really explored that side of themselves. And then like 15 years down the line, I see that they're moving in certain crowds, and I'm like, he always seemed a bit, but then now that he's here, he feels like he can kind of just express it.
Liberated.
He can express himself. And you've seen how African leaders, you know, feel about it. They're just like,
absolutely.
It's not happening. So, and this is what I was trying to say to CK at the time on the podcast. I was like, I have faith for Europe and, you know, like all of these sort of like America and stuff like that. And UK is pretty in a pretty good place. Africa and the Caribbean are at least 20 years behind before we start having a conversation.
Realistically.
Not accepting it, but because we're good. We've been brought up in where it's cool for us. It doesn't, you know what I mean? It is what it is. We accept people for whoever they are, but we've been amongst it. But I'm talking about, we've all got a cousin that's from them sides that he ain't trying to hear them conversations. You understand what I'm trying to say? Like he just won't listen to it. So I think we're a good 20 years away from having the conversation.
It's just going to take some re-education, man, and that's some relearning. And I think with each generation, hopefully, especially with the internet, like you know, people are hopefully connecting and having different examples and learning a bit more. But I mean, we're all influenced by the way that we're socialized. Like, we don't realize it. Do you know what I mean? We take
subconscious actions,
like it's like some of the things that we do, we don't even realize that it's influenced by so many other factors that we just think, oh yeah, this is just what I naturally think. It's like, nah, bro. We haven't even been given the chance to naturally think because we haven't been presented all the evidence.
You haven't seen it all.
You ain't
seen it all. Yeah,
I
hear that.
And last one, really quickly before we wrap up. New stuff. What can we expect from Mr. JJ Bola?
I've got my second novel coming out. The Selfless Act of Breathing comes out in October, I think, or September. I think September. I should know, but later on this year. I mean, I'd love to come back to talk to you guys about that specifically. The story is about a young man who's a teacher from London, who lives in London, grew up in London, and he makes the decision to end his life. And it just kind of like follows him on the journey as kind of he goes through certain things and it's confronted by certain.
I got the pre-order ready, bro. Don't worry about that. Got the pre-order ready. Go on.
Big up, but
I forget a pre-order. I want my signed copy.
Yeah,
I want signed live. I don't care. I want signed live.
Come on.
But you still got to contribute to the cause, though, man. What do you mean?
No, 100%. No, 100%. I'll do that. I'll buy one copy, which is just the pre-order. But I want him to come back on the show and sign it live.
sign the thing. Yeah.
I got you. But yeah, so that's the main one that's on the works. It's coming out in the UK and US as well, and hopefully translated into a couple of other languages.
Yes, congratulations! That was so dope, actually, because you got translated into German.
But German, Brazilian, Portuguese, Spanish, Italian,
and French. No,
so just quickly, like, do you get some analytics and stuff from like the books and stuff? Like, where do you find that the support is coming from, like country wise?
You know what? Germany supported my work like something else. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, do you know what I mean? But the way they've rode for me has been incredible, man. Like, has been incredible. Like, almost every day or every other day, I'll get a message from someone in Germany that's like, "Oh, your book," or this, whatever. And I think it's just like, obviously, there's difference in cultures and all of this. But this is why I think, you know what, when something resonates, it resonates. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you do, what you believe, whatever. There's a truth, like, you know, that's in your humanity, if you can see it, that allows you to connect with other people. And yeah, man, that's just been mad lucky.
Sick. Dope stuff, man.
No, legit. And what you just touched on there is personally why I love music so much. Like, we've got people all over the world who can't speak a lick of English, but will sing a Beyonce or Rihanna or rapper Jake song from top to finish.
Yeah.
Word for word. And it's just beautiful to see. Sometimes they try and frass in their music, okay, but it's still impressive that they're even able to do that. But no, you're right. And it's well, from my perspective, it was brilliant to watch you from the beginning, basically doing your poetry, releasing your poetry stuff, to honestly No Place to Call Home. Honestly, was just so wicked to read, because I was just like, I swear, everybody who's our age group was like, this is our secondary school life, basically.
Yeah.
So wicked to watch. And then Mask Off again, just dipping into such, especially with Black people, such a not a difficult subject, a touchy subject, which Black people don't want to dip into. And the whole masculinity thing, and then just waiting for your new stuff to come out as well. So it's been wicked to watch,
man. I'm looking forward to it, man, and appreciate what you guys have been doing. And obviously over the years as well, you know, how we've connected, whether we've seen each other all the time or not all the time or whatever. What I really love the most is that it's always love. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's always love, man. And I think that energy carries real. And you know what is, because that's normal for you, you think that's normal for everyone else, right? But there's not a lot of people who are like that. Do you know what I mean? Not a lot of people who are like that. So yeah, man, you guys are special, and just keep doing what you're doing, man.
Nah, love, bro.
We're pushing.
I appreciate your time. We stole an extra half an hour of your time today, but we appreciate it.
Bro. Did I expect to have the conversation that we had? I don't think I was asleep tonight.
No, you know what? We always get to that stage where we like it gets into like we try and start the situation very formal, and then we kind of just start dissecting. We kind of connect with all of the guests, and we just have really, really normal, you know, cool conversation. And I think, you know what, it's great. You know, but sometimes I hit Kof up and I was like, bro, we missed a couple of questions.
Yeah.
These are the best. Honestly, these are the best ones, man, because it's authentic. Do you know what I mean? You can't recreate it. I'm gonna, like, especially for someone like me, I'm gonna talk about my book, you know, in other places, especially as time comes closer. But it will just be like, oh, what inspired you to write this book? And what and it's just gonna be the same thing. But this, like, fam, I can't even tell you the last time I had this kind of conversation. The way I'm,
wicked, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I feel like something.
We're finishing this. I'm gonna watch the White King, Red Robber.
Yeah. I've got that on play. I've got it set up already.
As soon as we're finishing this,
there's an hour and a half. I got time.
Yeah, me too. I got time.
I'm gonna watch that bad boy. What do you mean? No, because it's very interesting. Like I tried to school someone about just a lot of things that were happening back in the 60s and 70s that I think most don't realize. especially like Botswana. I had to educate some people on it today, about the fact that the mining company there, I think they're called the Boys,
yeah.
They are making a killing, boy. And they got lucky with Botswana because they stumbled on what is probably the largest diamond deposit in Africa, brother. Insane. And how basically England probably wouldn't have let them go if they knew how big the deposit was. They would have never given them their freedom. They would have still been under colonialism now. It's mad. Like, if you get a chance, just look into the history of Botswana and just see how deep things were for them, man. It's just mad.
We'll touch on it. Anyway, guys, it's been wicked, absolutely wicked. JJ, again, thank you so much for your time, bro.
Mad love, man. Mad love. It's been real. Appreciate you.
Nice to catch up, JJ, man.
Yeah, man. We'll see you on the court in the summer, hopefully.
Bro, I'm coming. If my team get me there, I'm telling you, I'm there. But from the way they're creaking and cranking, I'm not sure my knees are going to make it to summer, bro. I'm going to have to oil these up. You know what? I'm going to start taking that cod liver oil to see if it works.
Exactly.
Let's see, man. All right, cool. All right, guys. Till next week. Also, really quickly, sorry. Pre-order JJ's book. You can actually go on jjbola.com. Get everything from there. It's on your site, I'm sure, right?
Yeah, it should be. It's on Google. It's definitely on Google.
You can get it on Audible as well.
Bro, I don't know
what's going on in my brain, bro. I got so much happening. I don't know, man.
if you're Audible, man, you can get it on Audible. Pre-order on Audible now as well.
There you go, wicked.
Yeah, these are all the things you should be telling the fans and that.
Listen, bro, someone will tell them. They'll find it somehow, man.
All
right, wicked. Love, guys. Have a great evening and see you next week. Peace.
Love.
All right, guys.
Peace.
Learn life. There's levels to the shit.